Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're talking about commander precons that I would avoid as a new player. These are commander precons that, for a variety of different reasons, aren't designed around new players, or ones that I would think would be good for new players, whether, you know, they're fun as for new players, or whether I think that they're just going to be way too complicated. There's going to be a variety of different reasons. So just because your favorite precon is on here doesn't mean that I hate it or anything like that. And everyone's going to have, like, you know, a different experience. For some players, they could jump right into one of these precons and enjoy the heck out of it. For other players, they're going to jump into these precons and they're going to absolutely hate it and never play the game again. This is all my opinion, and I welcome other opinions down below. If you have one of these that you like more, let me know, and you know, you think that a new player could play it, or if you have one of these, like a different one that you think the new player should avoid, let me know that as well. As I said, there's different reasons, and I'll go through each of them, and we're mostly just talking about the recent ones. So these are the ones that you'll most likely find in the store now. Otherwise, we'd be covering a lot more precons, especially if you go back to the very kind of first ones. There is some jankier stuff going on there. So we're talking about ones that you're more likely to be able to find in the shops right now. So a couple things first, make sure you guys subscribe, and we also have a Patreon going. So far we have one Patreon, George Bull, so huge shout out to him. If you guys want your name up here, let me know, and you know, go over and support the channel on Patreon and stuff. And yeah, I offer kind of, you know, Discord roles and Discord channels, and you can even get, you know, deck reviews and stuff like that if you'd like. So first up, the peace offering one. So this is one of the most recent ones. It is a group hug based theme. Group hug decks are quite complicated compared to normal decks. You need to know about threat recognition and be able to know where to hand resources out to. So you're going to have a lot of card draw based in this deck. You need to know who to give that to, not just kind of give it around willy-nilly, because if you give it to the wrong person, it could benefit them way too much. The deck also requires you to kind of politic with other people and make deals and stuff, which is just harder to grasp as a new player, where, you know, you're in a 4-player game, you can look over that guy, you can be like, hey, I will give you this card if you don't attack me, kind of thing. You know, you can start getting it, but it's just a little bit more complicated, especially when you kind of might be meeting new people or kind of getting along with new people. It's going to be a little bit harder to start out with, especially if you're learning the rules at the same time. We've got the Timey Wy deck. So this is a Doctor Who one. It is based around time counters and suspend and time travel. These are quite complicated mechanics compared to a lot of other precons. You need to learn a lot about different, like, triggers and stuff, remembering when to remove the counters from time stuff, or when to put more on. And overall, you're just going to have a big board state with a lot of different cards that are going to be doing a lot of different things with time counters and stuff, including those cards that aren't even going to be on your board over here in Exile, that you need to keep track of those ones too. Overall, as I said, this is a big splattering theme of themes throughout the deck as well, with a lot of the universes beyond ones. They kind of like add a lot of kind of thematic cards that don't really suit the deck, so it's going to be harder for new players to upgrade it and know which direction to go with that too. Next, we've got the Tinker Time one. So this is similar to the Timey Wy one. There's going to be a lot to keep track of on your board. There is lots of differently named tokens in this deck that are going to be doing different things. So, you know, you've got a gremlin over here, you've got servo, you've got, you know, constructs, you've got food, you've got treasure, you've got etc, etc. And while the actual tokens do come with the precon, it's not super easy to get a handle on them for new players. The commander also encourages you to have more types of tokens, so it's even after kind of upgrading it, it's not going to get any easier to really track or anything if you want to keep Gimbal as the main commander. Also, it's just a very odd theme, right? It's themed around kind of artifacts and artifact creatures, but you're going to go into like this, having blood tokens, having treasure tokens, having all of these kinds of different random tokens and stuff. So it's not an easy theme to kind of grasp as a new player. All right, we've got the Painbow one. This is honestly potentially one of the worst precons and land bases in existence within precons. It's a very odd deck that's a bit all over the place and has a theme of just multicolored stuff. So like having, you know, cards with more than one color and stuff like that. The Planeswalker commanders as well are not a great teacher for new players because they are so susceptible to being removed. If you have a Planeswalker commander, some someone can just attack your commander directly, because, you know, you could attack planeswalkers directly, which means that potentially you're going to lose your commander pretty early on. There are ways to avoid it by, like, you know, building up tokens and stuff to be able to block and everything, but that's also something you don't think about as a new player, is I need to block my commander and keep my commander out. Honestly, it just feels really bad to play as well. Along that same kind of line is the Planeswalker party one. Now, this one here, first of all, you know, you've got your Planeswalker commander, but that's not the reason that I have it on this list. It's because you are going to have a board full of a whole bunch of really cool Planeswalkers. It is going to be a real harsh teacher to Planeswalkers, because you're just going to have a whole bunch of Planeswalkers out there. You've got triggers all over the place, because stuff like, you know, gain stuff when Planeswalkers do stuff and stuff like that. But also you need to know on your turn which of your Planeswalkers to, you know, do the up +1 or -3 or, you know, whatever. And, you know, it's just a little bit more complicated when you've got a huge board of Planeswalkers. As it is, you know, having 1 or 2 Planeswalkers is a little bit complicated for new players, but that's kind of graspable. But when you've got, you know, 6, 7 Planeswalkers kind of out there, I don't remember how many come in the deck, but, you know, a whole bunch of Planeswalkers out there, it isn't super easy. It could potentially be really fun, but there's just so much to keep track of, and it's just super complicated because of that. All right, the creative energy one. Now, I will say that this is one of my favorite precons. That doesn't mean it's an easy precon. It is on here because energy is just this really unique mechanic. It's a counter that you're getting, but it's going on to you as the player. It's not tied to a creature or anything like that. You got to add in as well, there's cloning in the main commander, there's triggers from different things entering, so it's like, you know, when an artifact enters, etc., and more stuff like that. It just gets to the point that it's complicated, even just kind of playing one card, or even just going to combat with your commander. It's more focused than other decks, but because of the way it's focused on this more complicated mechanics and stuff, which makes it just like a little bit hard to kind of pick up for a new player, in my opinion. All right, similar to the Peace Offering deck, the Elven Council deck, this one is based around wanting to politic with other players. This time it's due to the voting mechanic. Essentially, you play a game, it'll be Will of the Council, and then you'll have players vote for stuff. And then when they're voting, it'll be, you know, either choosing one of 2 benefits for you, or they get a benefit and then you get a benefit too, and that kind of stuff. So because of that, it's something that you want to make deals with. Like, you know, you talk to this person, you're like, okay, I'm going to play this card. If we both vote for this option, then it will be more beneficial for us. Or, you know, if you vote for this option, then I won't attack you next turn, or something along those lines. There's also like a theme of like scry in here as well, but instead of like most precons where, in my opinion, it's like one major mechanic and then you've got like this minor mechanic that takes up like a third of the deck, it's more like half and half, which is just kind of a little bit bleh. The other weird thing about this is that this is an elf deck, right? But Simic isn't really the best color for elves. Don't get me wrong, there are Simic elves, especially within the Lord of the Rings set. But overall, you know, it's more Golgari that you're aiming for with elves, which is black and green instead of the green and blue. So you're going to miss out on some of the big elf cards and elves that might be more enjoyable, as well as it not being really elf themed, right? Like, you know, you've got some little elf stuff in there, but it's not really elf themed, as opposed to, you know, being actually centered around them. All right, we've got this Sliver Swarm one. So first of all, slivers just have this really bad reputation because they can get out of control so quickly. Essentially, you know, slivers, they all sit around and they buff each other up. So as you play a new sliver, instead of it just being its own self, it's now taking all of its power and it's going to give it to all of your other slivers. So now all of a sudden, you know, one card is buffing up your 5 other slivers that you've got out there. Not only that, it's also just a awful land base for a 5-color deck. 5-color decks overall, I would not suggest for a new player, just because you need to be able to, one, fix up your mana at times, so that way you have the mana available and colors that you need, as well as just, you know, upgrading is going to be more expensive and stuff. The other thing, as I said, about the slivers kind of all buffing up each other, that is a lot to keep track of. You need to keep track of this sliver over here is making them all indestructible. This one's giving them all +1/+1. This one's giving them all flying. This one's giving them, you know, another +1/+1, etc. And it just kind of gets a little bit out of hand once you kind of get to a big sliver board, which is what you want, obviously. They're very, very fun, but it's just not a great deck for new players, especially not from this precon with all 5 colors in it. And then the last one here is Alzi Unbound. So again, this is an awful mana base in this precon. You are going to struggle if you play it straight out of the box, in my opinion. It's not as bad as the Sliver one and not as bad as Painbow, mostly because it is all colorless, but it's still going to be not all that great. Overall, though, this is a full colorless deck with an Eldrazi sticker just kind of slapped on it. It is not fully an Eldrazi deck. It's got Eldrazi in it, and it's got a bunch of kind of Eldrazi and stuff in it. But if you want to play Eldritch Horrors, you are going to be playing a lot of sad robots alongside them, a lot of, you know, other kind of mechanical things, or, you know, weird spirits and stuff. It is not fully Eldritch Horrors. There's also some weird mechanics to kind of go alongside it. So like, for example, the Face Commander alone is colorless spells that you cast with mana 7 or less have Cascade. So then you need to keep track of the fact that you cascaded once, and then you cascade twice, and then you get the triggers from those and triggers from those, etc, etc. It's just going to get pretty complicated pretty quickly. Now, if you do want an actual Eldrazi deck, there is an Eldrazi incursion deck that came with the Modern Horizons 3. Now, I will say that that one is complicated as well, especially the Face Commander, because the Face Commander kind of works with the stack, which is like the cards that are triggering at the time or cards that are being cast at the time. So it isn't super duper easy, but it's actually Eldrazi themed, and you're going to have a lot of Eldritch Horror kind of Eldrazi stuff going on. All right. Now, let me know if you guys agree or disagree. Were you a new player that started with one of these decks and it worked out fine? Did you start with one of these decks and then you quit the game for a while and came back? Or are you just here for, you know, my beautiful face? I hope you guys had a great day and goodbye.